For years, my parents belittled my construction career. Now I earn more than both of them combined and have decided to cut them out of my will entirely. I'm a 34-year-old man running a construction business in Phoenix, specializing in upscale backyard transformations. Think pools, outdoor kitchens, fire pits, and more. Most people don't realize the grind it took to build this company. I started solo with a beat-up truck and credit cards pushed to their limits. I took every job I could get: deck repairs, window installations, concrete patching. I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. My hands were perpetually coated in cement dust, and my back felt like it was held together with duct tape. I slept in my truck at job sites during the week to save on gas. My home was the cab of a 2008 Ford F-150 with 173,000 miles and a heater that barely functioned. Arizona winters aren't as cozy as they sound when you're sleeping in a metal box. I lost my apartment after a client stiffed me on a $12,000 patio project. The guy claimed the steelwork didn't match the photos, even though the contract clearly stated natural steel varies in color. That was a harsh lesson in payment plans, and contracts. A lawyer wanted $5,000 just to start the process, which I didn't have. Then I landed a small pool installation for a couple whose son played on my high school football team. Family connections get you in the door, but you still have to deliver. They referred me to their neighbor, who passed my name to their son. Networking 101. I hired my first employee, Diego, who's still with us. I found him as a day laborer outside Home Depot. He had more skill than half the contractors I'd met. He just needed papers and a chance. I paid for his certification course myself. Best investment I ever made. The supply chain mess nearly killed us. Material costs skyrocketed overnight. I had to explain to clients why their quotes jumped 40%. We lost half our projects. I started chasing suppliers like it was a competitive sport, waking up at 4:30 a.m. to be first in line at depots, calling in favors from people I'd helped. We traded materials with other contractors to keep jobs alive. One week, I drove 1,200 miles across Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico hunting for specific parts a client insisted on. I slept maybe 20 hours that week. The client had no clue. It was just on time to them. A local news anchor gave us a shout-out in a segment, and our Instagram blew up overnight. We shifted to high-end projects only. I turned down a $50,000 makeover to focus on a $120,000 build that would put us on the map. It was a risky call, but playing it safe wouldn't get me out of that truck. The client tried to lowball me, then came back and doubled my original quote. Now we've got 20 employees, 3 crews working simultaneously, and a 3-month wait list. Last quarter, we booked $430,000 in projects with a 22% profit margin, our best ever. In Phoenix contractor circles, that's the big leagues. I don't drive a Lamborghini or flaunt a Rolex. My flex is efficiency. Every crew leader has a company card with spending caps I monitor in real time. We switched to Buildertrend software, client quotes, change orders and schedules in one dashboard, cutting admin time in half. I fired a guy who showed up late twice, reeking of vape and making excuses. I explained to the crew why. If someone's not punctual, clean, and prepared, they're not just hurting themselves. They're risking everyone's jobs. That's not drama, it's policy. Every dollar in my account was earned the hard way. No handouts, no family loans, no help. This matters because my family still sees me as a teenage screw-up, not someone out-earning both parents combined. I met Sophie, a brilliant interior designer who collaborates with us on outdoor kitchen finishes for high-end projects. She's sharp, gorgeous, and refreshingly real. No games. She texted me about granite samples and casually asked, "Free Friday? I know a great taco spot." Sophie grew up with her grandma after her parents left when she was 8. She juggled design school while caring for her grandma who had dementia. She knows what real struggle looks like. Early on, she'd drop by job sites with coffee for the whole crew, not just me. That's how I knew she was different. She respected the work itself, not just the results. Here's the family breakdown. My dad, Frank, manages a grocery chain district, earning about $85,000. My mom, Linda, is a school administrator. My sister, Chelsea, calls herself a marketing consultant but hasn't worked with a real client in years. She lives in my parents' spare room, trying to build a business empire via her Instagram. Her room's still a shrine to high school awards and boy band posters, now with a ring light and a girl boss sign for her daily motivational videos that get 12 likes. Growing up, the family dynamic was clear. Chelsea could do no wrong. I could do no right. They called her dropping out of college to backpack Europe, bold self-discovery. When I worked construction summers to pay for business school, they said I was settling for manual labor. Dad would visit my job sites, pointing out flaws that didn't exist. He still does. At a $300,000 lake house project, he told the homeowner the deck railing looked off, right in front of me. It wasn't. We were laser leveling the supports. I had to show the client the plans to calm him down. Mom wasn't better. When I made the dean's list 3 semesters in a row at business school, she said, "If only you'd applied yourself like that in high school." I worked 30 hours a week in high school and 15 in college while playing sports. Chelsea was a mess from day one. She'd announced she was plant-based the moment Mom served turkey, making a show of eating only sides and giggling when someone cut into the meat saying, "Chelsea, I saw scarfing a bacon cheeseburger last week." When I noted her plant-based diet didn't match her new shoes, she chucked cranberry sauce at me. I wiped it off and kept eating while everyone pretended not to notice. At my cousin's wedding, she cornered me to lecture about how my company harms the environment because concrete production emits CO2. This from someone who leaves every light on in the house and drives a 40-minute commute to the salon in her SUV. I asked how she enjoyed the gas mileage. She didn't speak to me for months, best months of my life. The hypocrisy kills me. She preaches sustainability but buys fast fashion weekly. She talks economic inequality but hasn't held a job in years. She posts about hustle culture while sleeping till noon. Sophie met my family last Christmas. Chelsea brought a guy in a turtleneck she called her business partner. They rambled about their wellness platform that promised to disrupt mindfulness with meditation, crypto, and social media, a startup buzzword salad. When I asked basic questions about revenue or customer acquisition, she got defensive, saying, "Not everything's about money." I laughed and said it's hard to make a difference when you're broke. Dad nearly choked on his water after dinner. Chelsea cornered Sophie in the kitchen while I grabbed drinks. I walked in as Chelsea was saying my construction gig wouldn't last and Sophie should have a backup plan. Sophie just smiled and said, "I've seen his books. Maybe you should ask him for investment advice instead of listening to Turtleneck Guy." Chelsea stormed off and Sophie winked at me. That's my woman. I've always dreaded family gatherings, but skipping them triggers weeks of texts about how busy I am. So I show up, keep my head down, and count the minutes till I can leave. I called Dad to confirm Mother's Day plans. His tone was oddly casual. "Just a small thing this year, your mom wants it low-key." I figured it meant the usual dinner at their place with flowers, nothing fancy. Before hanging up, he said, "Don't worry about coming this time. No need for gifts either, just focus on your business. The drive from Phoenix is a hassle." I felt a weird mix of relief and suspicion. Maybe they finally saw I was building something real, but years of family dynamics made me wary. I grabbed beers with my friend Derek at our usual spot. We met in business school, and he now runs his own plumbing company. We talk shop, supply chain issues, employee management, growth strategies, real business, not Instagram follower counts. Derek was skeptical when I mentioned Dad's call. "Sounds like a setup. Skip it and you've ditched Mother's Day. Show up and they'll act like you're crashing." Sophie, who just finished with a client, joined us. She follows Chelsea on social media for intel, comparing her posts to tracking an unpredictable storm. She mentioned Chelsea had been hyping a big Mother's Day surprise all week. Derek's comment stuck with me. I needed a foolproof gift, then I remembered a conversation from years back. Mom had mentioned wanting to visit Skyrock, a fancy wellness retreat near Sedona. She called it her dream getaway, but too pricey. Dad laughed it off, saying, "Maybe if we win the lottery." That morning at work, I checked Skyrock's website. They offered a rejuvenation weekend package, 3 days, 2 nights, spa treatments, guided meditation, hiking, and meals included. $3,800 for 2. Years ago, that would have wiped out my emergency fund. Now I can write a check without blinking. Business has been solid. We just finished a $230,000 backyard project for a tech exec, under budget and ahead of schedule. The client's already referring friends. I booked the retreat that afternoon, putting my parents' names down and paying in full. They even included champagne in the suite. For once, I felt good about a family gesture. I should have known better, Sophie, and I drove 2 hours from Phoenix to Tucson on Mother's Day morning. I told Diego I'd be offline all day, rare for me since I'm usually fielding client calls 7 days a week. As we pulled onto my parents' street, something felt off. Cars lined both sides. At least 15, including my aunt's Range Rover and my uncle's ridiculous Hummer he bought for off-roading, but never takes off pavement. I parked 3 houses down, carrying the retreat gift package. Sophie, looking stunning in a simple blue dress, squeezed my hand, sensing my tension. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in and followed the noise to the backyard. As I reached the patio doors, I heard my uncle say, "I thought Logan wasn't coming today." Dad responded, "He said he couldn't make it, probably for the best. That guy would just kill the vibe with his contractor stories. At least we've got Chelsea here. She's showing us her new presentation." I froze, hidden behind the doorframe. Sophie tightened her grip on my hand. The backyard was transformed. Tables were draped with lavish flower arrangements. A Happy Mother's Day Linda banner hung, and caterers prepped what looked like a gourmet feast. At least 30 people mingled on the professionally landscaped patio I'd redone for free years ago, until they hired my cousin's friend instead. My cousin Jard spotted me first. "Holy crap, Logan's here. Welcome, man." Every head turned. Dad gave a quick, "Just joking, son," before turning back to my uncle like I wasn't even there. As I stepped into the yard, the whispers started. Comments about me showing up uninvited, still driving that old truck, and how Chelsea just landed a big investor for her app. I heard he can't be doing as well as he says, and still got dirt under his nails. That last one was true. I'd helped a crew with masonry the day before when a guy called in sick Chelsea stood by the bar, sporting oversized designer sunglasses, chatting with neighbors. She muttered something to our cousin when she saw me, who laughed. Her eyes flicked to Sophie and rolled. I approached Mom at the main table. She frowned and said, "Why didn't you say you were coming?" Then she glanced at my hands. "You didn't bring anything for your mother? Wow, classic." She turned to Sophie with a fake smile. "And you brought your girlfriend? How nice. Did you know this was a family event?" Sophie shot back. "Actually, I'm his fiancée. We got engaged last month." She raised her left hand, showing the diamond I'd bought after our biggest deal yet. "Guess our announcement got lost in the mail, like our invite." I reached for the retreat package in my pocket but stopped. The setup was obvious. This wasn't a last-minute gathering. It was a planned event I'd been deliberately left out of. Then Chelsea's business partner, Travis, showed up in another absurd turtleneck, despite the 85-degree heat. He looked like a Silicon Valley costume, complete with $400 minimalist sneakers that resembled hospital slippers. He made a snarky remark about my construction outfit, asking if I'd considered tech since that's where the real money is. This from a guy who hasn't shipped a viable product. I mentioned we just finished a project for a CFO whose company passed on their app pitch. "Nice guy, Brad. Said your pitch deck was ambitious." Travis's smug look faded, and Chelsea's eyes widened. I grabbed a seat next to Jard, who's always been solid. He's a firefighter who hates BS as much as I do. Sophie sat beside me. Chelsea swooped in, saying the seat was for Travis and I could grab a folding chair from the garage. She looked at Sophie and added, "Not sure where your +1 sits. We didn't plan for extras." Jard stood up. "I'll help you grab one." In the garage, he whispered, "What the hell, man? Dad said it'd be small." Then Aunt Linda called about catering. Every time I asked who was coming, she changed the subject. Now I see why. I grabbed 2 metal folding chairs and said, "Guess I didn't make the cut." Back in the yard, we set up in a corner. Instead of returning to his table, Jard pulled his chair next to mine. A small gesture that meant more than he knew. Dad tapped his glass for attention, saying it was time to celebrate our amazing Linda and calling everyone to the catered lunch. After the toasts and photos, people lined up at the buffet. I started to head over when Dad shouted, "Logan, we didn't include you in the catering headcount. Grab a drink or something." The yard went silent. I stared at him, processing. "Are you serious right now?" The words slipped out. He snapped, "Watch your language, Logan. And yes, I'm serious. We paid $35 a head for this, and you weren't on the list." I looked around, some awkward glances, some enjoying the drama, most suddenly fascinated by their drinks. Mom stood, smoothing her blouse. "We told Logan not to come today."